Hi guys, this is Seth Christensen with the Got Any Cows podcast. 20 years ago, I was an 11-year-old kid with 2 bucket calves. Today, we have sent genetics from our company to 40 of the 50 states and 12 countries around the world. I still learn more every day, and I invite you to learn along with me. Hey guys, this is Seth Christensen with the Got Any Cows podcast, bringing you something a little bit different today. Just yesterday, I had a chance to sit down with my cousin, Jacob Christensen, who produces this podcast. Jacob does all of our video work, all the audio, all the editing, all the distribution, everything that makes the Got Any Cows podcast happen. Recently, Jacob has started his own podcast, the Success is a Myth podcast, and it's a really interesting premise there. I really enjoy what Jacob has put together, bringing guests on to talk about the idea of success and what is success, and maybe breaking some of those paradigms that we have as to how we've defined that historically and some of the experiences we've had surrounding our own definition of success and for me personally, what mine is. And after having a chance to sit down and record that episode with Jacob yesterday for his podcast show, for the Success is a Myth podcast, I thought this is something I'd also like to share with the Got Any Cows listenership. Appreciate all of you guys being here and taking the time to join us, and look forward to seeing what you think of this episode of the Success is a Myth podcast featured here on the Got Any Cows podcast.
You bought your first cows when you were 11, or first cow. I don't know exactly how many.
Yeah, first 2.
And now you're here.
Yeah.
When you were 11, what was your thought of that? Were you thinking it was just for fun, or is it something that was just different because your dad was doing, and your dad and grandpa were doing crops? I mean, what was your thought process there?
I remember at one point, just barely starting to help. I mean, I wasn't really even any help. I was present on the farm, so I'm making literally here's $1 for an hour. You know what I mean? And then Mike Geddes is like, well, I'll give you $2 an hour to help with dairy stuff. And I'm like, dude, it's I'm doubling my money, and so I went and started. I mean, all I did was start help feeding bucket calves and stuff, down at the dairy, and then pretty soon started milking them. I was milking cows with Mike Swainston. I remember Mike Swainston saying, hey, I think I'm going to buy a bull calf and raise it, and make meat out of this bull calf. And I'm like, dude, I think I'll buy 2. So I bought 2. I mean, so I probably had to work, 50 hours to afford my first $100 bull calf, but bought the 2 of them, and I raised them, everything exactly the same feed, same care, same money in, same everything. And when it came time to sell, the one calf was completely different size. I mean, just night and day difference in size. And when you're selling these calves, you sell them by the pound. So you're paid so much per pound. So calf A that's big is bringing me way more money as, an 11-year-old kid or whatever than calf B was. And I remember talking to Miles Geddes, so Mike Geddes' dad there at the dairy I was working at. And I'm like, so, what gives? There's this little tiny one that I got here, and then there's this big one that I'd got at Camilla Ray's place. And he's like, well, the little one is a Jersey cross. So he's half Jersey. So there's a different breed of cattle present in his genetic makeup. And, for me, I mean, I'm just a kid, still don't know anything about any of it, but I do know, I'm like, hey, I had to put in all this time, all this money, all this effort, and I got double the result here versus here. And the only difference was genetics. So, I mean, from that point until now, and I mean, that's been 20 plus years ago now. And that fascination's always been there. As far as, genetics are huge. I mean, basically any given phenotypic expression period for people, for cattle, for any given species, it's a combination of genetics and environment as far as what any of us become, right? Big calf, little calf, whatever. And so that's always been fascinating for me. And then obviously working with it with animals specifically, you're outside of, I guess, maybe some of the moral implications or things of working with human genetics, or some of the nuances of maybe that industry. And so, yeah, from the time I was just tiny, that's kind of how it came together.
So what kind of difference does the genetics make in your steak? Marbling? I mean, I just know the terms, but obviously what kind of difference it actually makes.
Yeah, no, night and day. It is absolutely night and day. So today, to go get an Angus steak, Angus is a quality eating product, but it's kind of the baseline today. Back in the day, you back up by 20, 30, 40 years, it was the premium product. It was there was beef and then there was black Angus beef, and that was the next level deal. But especially as certified Angus beef has become a global brand, they move north of $1 billion or 1 billion pounds of product a year. You see them everywhere. Angus is kind of what people expect, and it's a good steak, and you'll see, so the texture of the steak is good. The flavor of the steak is good. Wagyu genetics end up just being another level above and beyond that. So when you sit down and eat a Wagyu steak, I mean, the first thing you'll notice, it is going to have a higher price tag. Like if you sit down and there's an Angus steak and a Wagyu steak on the menu, the Wagyu will cost you more. There's a lot more that goes into making a Wagyu animal. And that Wagyu steak, the texture is going to be different. It's going to be softer. The composition of that fat, so there'll be a difference both in the volume and the quality of the intramuscular fat, or marbling, the term you mentioned. If you looked at that meat uncooked, the red portion of the meat is the actual muscle. The white little flecks that you'll see throughout are marbling or intramuscular fat. That's where the flavor comes from. And a Wagyu steak is going to have more of that intramuscular fat. And in addition to that, the composition of it's different. And so if you went in the day that one of those animals was processed or harvested, at room temperature, the fat, the white chunks within the Angus steak, at room temperature is hard. It's firm. At room temperature, or even just the body temperature of your hand, the Wagyu fat will start to melt. So the fat melting point on Wagyu fat is distinct. There's some added health benefits as well with Wagyu fat. There'd be higher concentrations of monounsaturated fats, higher concentrations of things like oleic acid. So things that people will take like fish oil for or olive oil for health benefits are present in Wagyu beef.
You find in that beef,
yeah. So that's one of the things I love about it. I mean, we're looking at these differentiated products, both of which my company builds on the genetic end. So clear back, several stages back prior to the steak on the plate. But most of the time things are either healthy or delicious, and it's trying to kill you. So this is one of the few things that like it's healthy and delicious in a Wagyu steak, and that's kind of what you'd see would be the flavor will be different, the texture's different, the fat melting point is different. So literally melt in your mouth. Not, I mean, like people use that term as like, oh, this is good. Like, no, literally, physically, like this fat would melt at your body temperature, like in your hand, it'll start to melt. And it's healthy. It's good for you, which is fantastic because everything else that tastes good is trying to kill you. So it's like,
that's an added benefit right there.
Yeah,
that's a bonus.
Yeah, that's big. Yeah.
That's crazy. So going back to your journey, what was the first time when you realized like, oh, I enjoy this a lot more than, I don't know, moving pipe or driving tractor or driving truck for your dad and grandpa's farm?
I mean, my dad and myself were very much the same, right? Like both of us like to do our thing. And in his case, his thing is crops, right? He loves the crops. He loves to grow crops. And for me, I think a lot of it was just that it was my thing, right? Like it wasn't something I was going to do for anyone else. I wasn't going to do because someone asked me to go water the crops, or someone asked me to go seed this, or someone asked me to go spray that. It was, I want to do this. Like I'm interested in these animals. And so from a young age, and I think that's for most anybody, regardless of what your area of interest is, I think that's a common human trait that it's like, I want to do my thing. And so from a young age, it's hard to define exactly why it was that became my thing. But a large portion of, I think, the drive behind like, hey, I'm interested in these animals is that, yeah, this is my project. And I think too, people, and for me personally, I mean, looking at my personality or how I'm wired, I'm either really, really good at things or I quit, which isn't necessarily a great character trait. But I realized early on, this was something I was good at. Taking care of the animals is something I was good at. Understanding the genetics and how to improve them was something I was good at. Marketing these animals well at higher than commodity values was something I was good at. And so that was enjoyable for me to, I guess, like anybody, identify something that you're interested in, that you enjoy, that you excel at, and it becomes your thing. And so that kind of made it like, this is preferable to me over doing really anything for anybody else. It's all I've done since. I mean, it's been 20 years now since I got those calves, and I haven't done anything outside of the cattle industry. So
I think, I know I draw a lot of parallels between your and my story, particularly in the fact that we developed a love for what we do at like a younger age, and we were afforded the opportunity to do that without having to instantly make it a career.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
You had however long until went on a mission, went to college, and then figured it out, and then I did it for 5 or so or even more years before I got out of the house and I was like, I should try to do that. Like, I want to do this full time.
Right. Yep.
So for you, I just would be intrigued to hear, like, what was a point where you learned something just invaluable from like a mentor?
Honestly, I mean, right from the beginning, I was lucky that I had people that gave me opportunities to learn. And, I think this is one thing coming to even kind of the central theme of your podcast, that success is a myth, which I enjoy the title there, by the way, and I think quite often, especially within, I don't know what you want to call it other than maybe this category of person, a self-motivated person or someone that wants to make a name for themselves or wants to do well for themselves or is motivated to do their own thing. Quite often we have it in our minds that I'm going to do it on my own. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this is going to be all me. Like, I am so independent. Like, I am tough, and all of us have to have a door opened. Like, I'm not saying you don't have to hustle, because you do, but someone has to provide the opportunity. That 100% of the time is the case. Like, it could present itself in a fleet of different ways. You know what I mean? That could be because, my dad was in this business before me, or that could be because my neighbor introduced me to this thing, or this could be I met someone at a trade show, and whatever it may be, someone provided that opportunity. So for me, even from the beginning, even just milking cows as a kid, for a couple bucks an hour and learning there, but Mike gave me the opportunity, a couple different things that are still very, very much central pillars of what I'm doing 20 years later as a global brand versus, as a kid milking cows. And Mike gave me the opportunity to learn artificial insemination. So AI, every time people, AI is the real AI. Anytime people say AI, the buzzword AI, I'm like, I've been into AI since way before AI was cool, And not nearly as glamorous as artificial intelligence. It is a dirty job. But learning that technique. So I'd kind of relate it to something maybe more familiar for most people would be something like being a plumber, or things like that. That sometimes we think like, hey, this is going to be a dirty job, right? But there's a lot of value there, and there's a skill there, and people will absolutely pay for it, right? And so artificial insemination, dirty job, right? Like this is not a clean or fun or pretty thing, but I learned how to do it young. And Mike, that I was milking those cows for, paid for me to go take a crash course in that, let me start practicing on those animals there. Actually, your dad went out and worked with him in Hawaii, but the summer between my junior and senior year of high school, and that would be where I really developed proficiency, was breeding those cows. So going from Mike had 80 or so animals, going over there were 400 or so, and so I just taking the skill that had been developed and I guess getting to a proficient level, and it's just repetitions, shooting foul shots or whatever else, you do it a bunch of times and you're good at it. So learning that, and then so I developed a skill, I guess, that was unique and valuable, even if it was a dirty job, in part because it was a dirty job. There's value to it. You know what I mean? Like, and because it's not what everybody aspires to do in the morning, people will pay for things that are hard, that are dirty, that are difficult. So I developed that skill. And then in addition to that, Mike had a herd of Jersey cows. I mentioned those kind of slower growing cows and things. They're also a lower milk producing cow, but they produce a really, really rich milk. And lower producing cow on Mike's dairy wasn't going to cover the bills, wasn't going to cover all her costs. A lower producing cow needs to be eliminated from the herd because she's not profitable. But a lower producing cow in a commercial setting is perfect for the person that only wants a few gallons of milk here and there as a family milk cow. And the value difference between a family milk cow and the hamburger that cow would go on to produce if she were just eliminated in a conventional setting is drastic, is distinct. And so Mike paid me on a commission sales basis I'd have been, I don't even know exactly what age I was when I started doing that, maybe 14, 15, right in that same window that I got trained in AI. And I started selling those for him. And so the same premise there again, learning a distinct skill in the AI and then learning how to market things effectively and sell. And again, I didn't have a wife and kids to feed. I didn't have a mortgage to pay. I'm still living at home and still drawing a paycheck, from just milking cows, and learning and developing those proficiencies. Those two things that I developed 15, 16 years ago now, still in a big way, are a big portion of what does pay a lot bigger bills today. So,
yeah, I remember when you came over to Hawaii, I had to have been maybe 8 or 9 or 10. And I was like, Seth came to Hawaii from the summer, I think he did.
Yeah, yep.
And I was so confused. I was like, why would he come over here to work with cows? I was like, I thought
of all the things to do in Hawaii. He came over here to work with cows.
Yeah, I was like, he could have done a myriad of different things. But it's what you loved and it's what you were good at as well.
Right.
And I think that within the marketplace that you've kind of inserted yourself into and found that you've got to find what you're good at meets what people want and what is fun to you, what you enjoy doing.
And there has been some value, you mentioning that as far as like kind of identifying like where's the space in which I was going to operate even at that point, and it's where I continue to operate now. It is okay that it's a little teeny tiny corner of the universe, right? Like I think most everybody, and again, this is just my perception of the world, but as a kid, it's like everybody's like, well, I'm going to be a doctor or a lawyer or a pilot, or you know what I mean? Like these things that are maybe, socially well thought of or things like that. Now it's, I'm going to be a YouTube influencer or whatever, you know what I mean? Like there's things that are kind of socially well thought of. And it's okay, I guess, to be way outside of that. And the reason I say that is, there's a whole bunch of people trying to get into med school. There's a whole bunch of people trying to get into law school. There's a whole fleet of people you're going to compete with in maybe these more popular or well-defined or well-thought of careers. I'm like, running in a race to be the world's best at beef cattle genetics. Frankly, I'm not running against that many people. It is a really, really, really tiny corner of the world that has nothing to do. The closest touch point most people would have with what my entire career is centered around is literally the steak on the plate. And there's like 5 entire industries between the steak on the plate and the work I do in genetics. But being in a tiny finite corner, it's easier to be the fastest in a race when there's not that many in the race. So I would just say, I guess it's okay if you do something outside of the realm of what everybody considers is normal or safe or exciting or respectable.
When I started out just trying to figure out this whole selling stuff to people and providing a service to people or a product, explain to me why you don't want to be steps A through Z. You don't want to explain to me why you don't want to be the cattle genetics, the butcher, all those different steps, the trucker, all those different steps that go from your place where you raise the cows, you breed the cows, to a plate. Because my biggest my biggest misconception, which is a common misconception, is, if I'm doing something more narrow, there's going to be less people. But what I found is if you do something more narrow, more niched thing, you find the best people in that niche. And you become one of the, I'm not trying to hype myself up,
but you're the
but
best
you become the best at that. One of the best. So why wouldn't you want to be A through Z?
No, and that's a fantastic question. I think for most anybody, if you're starting into what we'll call an entrepreneurial journey or starting into building a business of any kind, for any of us, you mentioned paying the bills right at the beginning. It's like literally anything that anyone will pay me to do, I'm like, I will do it. You know what I mean? Because I have to eat. You know what I mean? Like I have to live. I have to take on literally any project. And that's very normal. I think that's okay. I think that's a normal starting point. On day one, it's like, okay, if you'll pay me, I'll do it, right? But I think a natural progression, and especially for a business that's really going to develop, and if you're really going to reach the peak of your potential, it does require some specialization, right? So my degree is in economics, and Econ 101, the class everyone hates, but I thought it was great. You sit down and it's specialization in trade, right? Doing what you are best at, instead of spreading yourself so thin across every facet of your industry. You can't possibly be the best at all of the things all at once.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't. You can't, like an Olympian in a given sport, right? They don't play every sport at an Olympic level, plain and simple. They have dedicated their time, their focus, their energy to one thing, quite often one event. You're going all the way down into narrow focus. If you're going to be the best, you can be an Olympian at one sport, or you can be a Little League athlete at 12. And the same premise applies as you're kind of building out your business. You probably about have to test all of those 12 or A to Z options, or every aspect of videography for you, or every aspect of the cattle industry for me. I have tested probably about every little corner of it, and learning by doing, what do I like and what am I uniquely good at? But then once that's identified, learning to focus on that, because you can't be the best at all of them all at the same time, And if you're really going to be good at the one thing you focus on, you've got to eliminate a lot of these distractions. And, it was on another podcast actually that I listen to. So Donald Miller does a Business Made Simple podcast. It used to be the Story Brand podcast. Anyway, does a wonderful job on there, but he had a guest on, and it could have been on his, or even there's a Marketing Made Simple. Anyway, it's developed into a whole ecosystem of podcasts and things there. But they had someone on that was trying to sell accounting to everyone, and like I just need someone to pay me to be an accountant. Like, I am a CPA, I got to market this thing. And they realized that they were particularly proficient at and or particularly, well connected within dentistry, right? So like dental offices, right? So dental office accounting sounds pretty dangerous to niche clear down to, like, I'm not going to account for everybody in every kind of business. Like, unless you're a dentist, I'm not going to do your books. That sounds a little bit like, oh, but am I going to like pay the bills on this, But that individual on this podcast, again, I mean, random little tiny corner of, you like latch onto things they stick in your head, But in this story, it says, yeah, I was kind of struggling to try to be everything to everyone. But once I said, hey, I am the guy. If you're a dentist and you need your books done right, like, the only way to be the best is, yeah, that guy knows tax code as it relates to a dental office, front, back, and sideways. He can't know how my beef cattle genetics company runs, relative to tax code, but he can surely know exactly how a dental office relates to tax code and how that all changes. And his business has gone nuts as a result of being the best at that instead of, a little league athlete at all the sports. So
yeah. I think a natural progression, like you said, is day one, you're saying yes to every single thing. You're like, are you kidding me? Somebody's going to pay me to do what I want? 100%. Let's freaking go.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the best day ever.
I'm like, I'm making $1 an hour. Now I'm making $2 an hour.
That's exactly how it is. Yeah. And then there's a second point where you're like, if I don't say no to this person, I'm going to go crazy. Yeah. Like you have to, I think, the first part is saying yes to everybody. You've got to figure out what corner of the universe you belong in and what corner of the universe you specialize in. And then part two is, which I think I'm in part two, is like, okay, I've got to start saying no to people. Like, if I don't say no to people and start specializing, gonna go crazy. Yeah. Is there a certain piece of advice that someone gave you, or that's like widely known that you have found to not be true?
Ooh, that's a good question. Wow, that's a good one. What common success is a myth. That's the title,
the concept. Yeah,
concept there, like that concept. I mean, that can be phrased a lot of different ways, but yeah, I don't know. Success is commonly defined, like, people have a preconceived notion of, that means you are going to, work one of these well-respected jobs, and you're gonna take this safe job. I would say this that it is safer to take a job, you know what I mean? Or to be successful, you have to take one of those, like, you have to be a doctor, I don't even know if I throw a pilot in there. It's like doctor or a lawyer. Like, unless you've gone to a pile of school, and I mean, obviously very, very necessary. Like, I am really glad the guy running the knife when I'm under the knife has gone to a pile of school, you know what I mean? And, or if I need a lawyer, he's gone to a pile of school, that's great. But that's the only, like, to be successful, you have to do like a common standard, well thought of profession. You got to go to a ton of school. It can only be in one of these safe things. And they're like, you got to take a job because it's safe, And I would say a friend of mine, Hank Brankman, actually a South African, born South African, but then moved to Idaho, was a neighbor of mine there in Linrose. And talking to him, he said, a lot of times people say, man, like, you're self-employed or you run your own business, or like, that's like risky. You know what I mean? Like, that's scary. He's like, look, he's like, for all of my income to shut down, or he says, or he puts it this way, he said, for all of your income to shut down, assuming you're in just a normal career, normal job, he's like, you need to get fired once. He's like, for all of my income to disappear, he's like, I've got to get fired. And his was just a small firm, small engineering firm. It's like, I've got to get fired at least 26 times. You know what I mean? All of these different clients would have to walk away. And I thought that's a valid thought. I mean, quite often it's the safe play is to work a job. And the risky thing to do is take on your own thing. But I think especially today, with the availability, the development of the gig economy and just the ability to do independent contract work, the opportunity to build out your own business, the ability to network from home functionally for free, the opportunities present. Yeah.
With a freaking phone. That's all it takes.
I am connected to the planet with this thing in that costs me pennies, to own and run. in a way that, I mean, a guy spending 50 weeks a year on the road could never do, physically, as far as physically being present and connecting with all these people. So I would say, yeah, if you were going with maybe a common thought of like, oh yeah, this is how the world works. Like a job is the safe play and running a business is the risky one. I'd say not true on that one. So
it totally makes sense. If you were to go to the person you were 10 years ago, I mean, it's kind of right smack dab in the middle of your journey with cattle.
Sure.
Where were you in that point, and let's start there. Where were you?
Yeah, so backing up by 10 years, I'd been 21 years old. Just got home off a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to Nicaragua. So I had lived in a third world country. Just got home, was going back to Utah State. Started to date my wife at that point in time. Wrapped up my degree in economics over the course of the next couple of years, and then scaled my business shortly thereafter. Would be where I was at that point in time.
What would that person, that kid, say to you now, where you're at now?
Yeah. They'd be like, dude, you're fat. But like, I mean, like, it'd be fairly apparent right from the get-go. I mean, that kid was like $170, But like, I mean, like, I gained
let's go this route. What version, what would that person, what your 21-year-old Seth, what would 21-year-old Seth define as success?
I remember being a kid at that age and kind of coming home right off the mission and having, goals and plans and thoughts. And I am grateful and excited to say today, I mean, like, there are things that I had planned out and thought of and written down a decade ago as thoughts, as ideas, as plans, as goals that are realities now. Like I remember coming home, and saying like, I want to own a house on the hill. Like I want to be able to own the ground that's out around me. I want to have, the best cattle on the planet. I want to have a smoking hot wife and some cute kids. And like, I mean, I've got it. You know what I mean? Like there's all the imperfections that go with it. You know what I mean? I'm overweight. I still got to pay all these bills. Yada, yada. You know what I mean? Like I've still got all the same problems anyone else has.
Careful what you wish for.
Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. But like I have been so blessed, so fortunate. And I do think, looking at in both directions, I mean, looking at where 21-year-old me was looking forward, I am glad that I had a plan. I had a direction. It was written down. I knew where I wanted to go. And it is cool to be there and be like, hey, it's not done. You know what I mean? There's another 10, 20, 50 years looking forward. I'm like, I know where I am and all of the great and terrible things about where I am. You know what I mean? Each of us is more keenly aware than anyone else will ever be of all the imperfections, right, of our day-to-day life, right? But I have been so blessed to make it to the point I'm at now. And I know where I'm going again, looking at the next 10, 20, and 50 years. And I know I can get there because I've already done it. You know what I mean? Like it's been done before. And honestly, the last 10 years and the challenges overcome to get from where I was then to where I am now were frankly harder than a lot of what I'm looking at needing to overcome or tackle or the next milestones in the next 10, 20 to 50 years. So it gives me a lot of confidence as far as where I'm headed next, and what's coming up.
Was there a time, or have there been times when things seemed super successful, even if they weren't? From the outside looking in, someone's like, "Man, he has made it," and you're like,
"Yeah."
I mean, I'll just let you answer that.
No, for sure. That's a good question because so in the cattle industry, quite often people will measure success. Again, you talk about the success is a myth, and it is because they'll measure success by, well, how many cows do you have? And when I came out of college, we had some investors come in. We scaled the thing really, really quickly, right? And grew really, really fast. And if someone was to come in, this would have been in like 2018, and look at what we were doing. They'd be like, dude, you have like 700 cows. Like, this is awesome. Like, you are so big. You know what I mean? Like, this thing is scaled. You've got these investors. You know what I mean? Like, there's this capital flowing. And it was nightmarish. I mean, like, the tail end of 2018, front edge of 2019, most stressful period of my entire existence. Like, and it's not close. Like, I remember going in 2019, so it would have been my second anniversary, April 15th of 19. And I remember, so I'd have only been 2019, I've been like 26, right? Yeah. And so I'm sitting there and trying to take a night off to go do a quick night away with my wife, for our anniversary. I remember sitting at dinner, we weren't even at dinner. We were trying to head out the door. I'm like, I couldn't get my hands to steady. You know what I mean? Like, I'm looking like I've got like Parkinson's. You know what I mean? I'm looking like I'm 80 something years old, just due to stress. You know what I mean? And it was a mess. You know, and from the outside looking in at that point in time, people were like, man, dude, like this is so big, and there is so much money involved here, and there's what, you know, like, and this is right out of college. You know what I mean? You're just like rocket ship is what it looks like based on people's definition of what success is. You know, like yeah, I had a ton of cows. But, you know, I mean, it was a huge lesson learned at that point in time. Like, money does not come free, plain and simple. It doesn't matter if an investor hands it to you. It doesn't matter if the government hands it to you. It doesn't matter if your employer hands it to you or somebody that you're working for on contract. Money is not free. And I remember coming out of college, you know, being super excited and flattered, you know, that people were willing to put a lot of money in with me. And that was neat. That was cool. It did. It let us scale. And I mean, and there's been a lot of positives that have come from that experience. You know, a lot of lessons learned from that experience. But I also learned, you know, that it would have been cheaper to have sourced that money conventionally, you know, and just frankly just taken on a bank loan. You know, I mean, and it's looking at it like at the time you jump in, it's like people are just coming in like, dude, I've got all this money and here it is. It's ready to rock and roll. Like, pilot this for me. And I'm like, this is cool. Like, this is awesome, you know? And maybe even my definition of success a little bit was like, well, I need to be bigger. Like, if I'm going to be successful per se, I got to be big. And we scaled. But the lesson learned too is like, if somebody's going to come in and invest with you, they don't want just the rate of return, like where the current interest rate is at. If that was all they wanted, they'd dump their money in a CD or in something safe, right? They want higher rates of return, meaning it will cost you more. And I'm not saying that like investment capital is great. Like I said, it was a good thing for me. They're good people. I learned from them. There's a lot of positives, right, in that window. I don't mean to say like, oh man, you know, this will never work. But it meant that we got way too big, way too fast, and the size of the cow herd way outpaced the management we had available, way outpaced the feed we had available, way outpaced the market we had available. Like, it was too big, too fast. You know what I mean? Like, money in and of itself doesn't solve things, right? And so, I mean, for example, today we'll typically be between 400 and 500 animals and net drastically more than we ever did with 700. But yeah, if someone was looking at it from the outside in, they're like, oh yeah, when you were at your peak, you know what I mean? Or when you had 700, that must have been awesome. Like, I was losing my butt when I had 700, you know. Now, I mean, it's almost cut in half if you just say 400, you know, is a normal number, but we're drastically more profitable. And it's not just the profit thing. Again, success for me is having the freedom to spend time with my family, is having the freedom to market them how I want, or to feed them how I want, or to run the number I want, to own them. And have that degree of control versus being beholden to someone else that is front of the capital. Meaning, like, yeah, the money was given per se, but it's not just given for free. Like, they don't want it just to go away. You know, they're expecting a strong rate of return. There's a reason they had capital to invest, right? They're very, very capable businessmen, and I learned a lot from them. Like, it was a good thing, but it was inordinately stressful. And yeah, everyone else would have been, oh, you're successful because you're big. I'm like, no, like, I'm more successful now in my mind by my metrics because I'm a little smaller, you know, than what I was then.
How do you take a product, in your case, cattle, that instead of racing for the lowest price to get the cheapest buyer, how do you take that product and essentially the same cows, to my knowledge, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and charge exponentially more and enter into this more premium market that you're in? How do you do that?
Yeah, I think it's very much the same as like we were talking about, like with product offerings or with service offerings. Like, you could offer A to Z, or you can offer 12 different things, or play 12 different sports at a little league level, and you feel like you have to offer all the products just to do it. On the flip side of that, we're talking about clients, or the individuals you're selling to. Sometimes at first it feels like I've got to sell to everyone, because how could I ever possibly pay all these bills unless I sell to just, like, if I got to appeal to everybody. And I think there's a lot of power in realizing not only can I narrow down what my product offering is, but it is okay that not everyone's going to buy this, right? Or this is not going to be the fit for everyone. Like, I am going to have a bunch of people, like, case in point. We're sitting here in Franklin County. Okay, so I'm born and raised here. If my company had to operate on the revenue we generate in Franklin County, I'd be bankrupt by lunch. You know, like we couldn't run a day, you know, on the revenue that comes here. But that's okay. Like I don't have to sell my cows or the genetics for my company to everyone that's ever had a cow. I don't have to sell them to every neighbor I've ever had. I get told all the time, friends and people I've grown up around and that I love and respect. Oh, your cows are too expensive. Like no cow can be worth that. They're not my client, right? And that's okay. Like that's fine. Like they can run cheap cows.
It's better that you realize that instead of getting offended. Yeah.
It's fine. They're like, no, like I completely get it. Like there's nothing wrong with running cheap cows. That's great. That's your deal. Like if you want to run cheap cows and that's your game, great. Not a problem whatsoever. I don't sell to people that want the cheapest. I sell to people that want the best. The people that call me, the clients that support and feed my family, that pay my bills, they want the best. Not second best, not also ran, not little league. They want the Olympian. And we are the best at what I do. And that is why I'm able to charge what I do for my product, is that it is the best. Not everyone will buy it, not even close. I mean, if they say 98% of the U.S. population isn't engaged in agriculture, so we're already down to 2%. And among that 2%, the vast majority are looking for least cost production for commodity point of sale. So within that 2%, it's a tiny percentage of that 2% that say, no, like I don't want the cheapest. I want the absolute best. I want the most value. These are people that understand, like even if I pay more, but I am getting more value than what I am paying an increased price, they grasp that. And my clientele isn't necessarily somebody that spends all day, every day, or is, my client, frankly, doesn't really wear a cowboy hat. The people I work with, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're CFOs, they're pilots, they own construction companies, insurance companies, oil companies, data companies, all sorts of different things. They work in AI, the other one, not. These are the people that are my clients, and they respect the value I bring to the table, and they're willing to pay a fair price. Now, I still do everything I can to deliver as much value as possible. Even charging a premium, I want to be delivering more value above and beyond the increased price I charge, so that there's value returning to me at that premium price point, but there's even more value returning to them by paying it. So
what's the first step in going from offering everything to everybody to offering the best at one thing? What's the first step, or what's either the first step or what's the biggest step between those two?
I mean, for me personally, I would say there is a testing phase. Like I think it would be pretty challenging, and I'm glad you mentioned kind of steps, or phases, or that it is a process, because I think if you went one day you offered literally everything under the sun, and the next day you just threw a dart at the board and you only offered that, it may or may not play out that great. For us, we tested a series of different breeds of cattle. So we ran from 2018 until now 5 different breeds of cattle, of which only 2 are ones that we're actively engaged in. But I know that they're the ones that fit because I have tested the others. And then the same premise when it comes to how do we market or what do we sell. I have sold everything under the sun, but now I have actionable data that says these things sold, those things didn't. And it wouldn't matter if the guy right next to me that was in the same industry had completely different results. And I think it can get dangerous sometimes to base all of your plans on somebody else's scenario or somebody else's experience. Like there's always lessons to be learned, right, from somebody in the same industry or even somebody in different industries. But if you base your whole game plan on like, well, this worked perfect for this guy, like, well, you're not this guy. Like you don't live in his house, you don't pay his bills, you're not working in his environment, you're not doing it on the exact same timeline. Things change all day, every day. There's new opportunities, new challenges that come up all day, every day. And figuring out what is best for you in your business and what you can sell and what you can produce well, I think does require some testing, and it is, at this point, I am confident. When I come out and say that I'm the best at what I do, it's because I've tested it. You know what I mean? I've tested it front, back, and sideways. I know what I'm not the best at. I know a lot more things that I'm not the best at than I do the one I am. Sure. But I'm confident in pursuing this path because it wasn't just I think we're going to do this, and then we just did that. Or like, I think we're just going to go full send and take a mortgage or take a lien against the house and go in, direction A. Like, no, like we've tested it. We have data. So data-based decisions are powerful, because at that point, this isn't a guess. This isn't a theory. This isn't based off an outside case study. It's like, yeah, my house with me paying the bills and with me doing the work, this worked, that didn't. The numbers say so, and the numbers don't lie. And we have doubled down on what's worked best. So,
is there something that you once believed about hard work? Like just thinking you could just hustle your way through it instead of, I don't know, is there something that like a mindset shift there that's happened?
Yeah, absolutely. No, 100%. And this is one of those things. I mean, growing up in ag, being I was actually just talking about this yesterday with Justin. Uncle Justin was out there preg checking cows, and we were chatting about this. There's kind of this glorification of being a martyr in ag, specifically saying like, I work the hardest and I take the least pay, and I just beat myself to death because I am tough, and I take a lot of flack locally for the fact that I do run my company primarily from my office. I'm spending a lot of time on the phone, running the sales end of things. I'm spending a lot of time in a spreadsheet, looking at the finance end of things, looking at the genetics end of things. Like, I am not a traditional agriculturalist. Like, I'm not a traditional, like, I'm not on a horse or wearing a cowboy hat. I am not necessarily even in the tractor on a real regular basis, and I take a lot of flack for that locally. I mean, there's like, that Christensen kid over there, I don't know. But there's this myth that, yeah, you can just hustle your way to, like, you can just grind. And like, if you just kick the crap out of yourself, then yeah, you are going to be so tough. And I'm like, I don't know. I look at it this way too. It's like, okay, I mean, is there a certain degree of like, yeah, you got to be willing to sacrifice? Yes. Is there a certain degree of you have to hustle? Absolutely. Do you need to work to get to where you're going to go? Yes. But are you going to just beat yourself to where like, oh, this is all that's going to happen? If I just had to wreck myself to get from here to where I wanted to go, is that actually where I want to go? Like, I look at it this way. There's a lot of people, even among my clientele and among people that I've just, I guess, observed from afar, to reach a certain level of quote unquote success, right? Or especially a certain level of financial prowess, frankly, their family's been sacrificed on the altar, right? This is marriage 2, if not marriage 3. We're estranged from at least one of our kids, if not multiple. The ones we do get along with are just milking us for all we're worth and are spoiled little turds. There's some real messes made because they're like, well, I'm going to sacrifice. Like, I'm going to travel 50 weeks a year. I'm going to work 20 hours a day. I'm going to hustle. I'm like, and then you've got there, I'm like, yeah, I guess you've got success by one metric, but did you really succeed? And so I think there's got to be balance in the sense of again, coming around to number one, I guess, defining what is success for you. If success for you is just beating the crap out of yourself, great. Thumbs up, you do you, you know what I mean? But do it over there, right? Because I'm like, I am going, I know, like for me, like I have defined what success looks like for me. And then accomplishing that is where I need to be pointed. It's not like somebody else says you got to work this job. Somebody else says you have to make this much money. It's not even the inverse of what we're talking about here. And so-and-so says, well, you need to take off this much time to be successful, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It is defining, like, for me, that my wife loves me, right? That I'm a present father, that my business does succeed, especially in the sense that I've done what I say I'll do, that my clients are taken care of, that my bills are taken care of, my obligations are taken care of, like the people I committed to, like, yeah, I signed my name here, like I'm going to pay this, that's covered. But I don't need to just, I don't know, prove to the world that like, man, I can out hustle. Like I am tough. Like I get really tired of tough guy syndrome.
Yeah. It's a real thing. Yeah.
It's a real thing.
It totally is.
Hey guys, this is Seth Christensen with the Got Any Cows podcast. I appreciate you guys being here today. Number one, bull leases. We are in bull leasing season. We have bulls that are ready to go today. These are from the front edge of our Akaushi breeding program. These are embryo transfer bulls that are 18 months old and ready to breed cows anywhere in the country. Our lease program is unique, especially in the sense that we offer a 2-year lease option. To take advantage of that 2-year lease, you're able to get into one of these top-notch bulls that can easily cost $10,000 plus for just $4,000 for a 2-year breeding season lease. You're able to take that bull and receive delivery of him directly to your ranch with the delivery included in the purchase price of that lease. So for just $4,000, you're getting a $10,000 plus valued bull arriving at your ranch to breed your cows for the next 2 years. Now is the time. Breeding season is upon us. It is peak breeding season right now. Here in Spring in the Rockies, we are in the middle of getting cattle bred. And if you want one of these top-notch red Wagyu or Akaushi bulls breeding your cows, I want you to reach out to me. Please shoot me a text at 208-589-9988. One more time, that number's 208-589-9988. Shoot me a text and let's get a bull headed your direction for this spring breeding season.
What's something that you do consistently that maybe other people overlook?
This is a pretty generic answer in the sense that most people probably don't overlook it. But I spend a lot of time reading, even if that's not necessarily reading. Like, I'm not great either at being the one that says, man, there's this book, and like, there are people way better than me at that. But I make it a point, again, talking about focus or like a really, really specific, narrow deal. Like, I am not the world's most well-read in leadership. I'm not the world's most well-read in finance either. But I am probably as well-read as anyone in beef cattle genetics, especially at this point, it's Akaushi. It's not even all just Wagyu. It's like a separate subset of a Japanese breed that we're working beef cattle genetics, because that's what my clients come to me in part because I know the most about that tiny, tiny corner of the universe, right? I'm not going to know the most about everything, but I do spend quite a little bit of time reading, whether that's, industry publications, whether that's reading basically anything anyone has written that is germane to what I do day to day. And so, yeah, I would say people generally, reading is a really common answer when you talk about, self-improvement at large, I guess. But people maybe overlook just being educated isn't necessarily my degree, isn't necessarily my diploma, isn't necessarily anything like that. It's that I know the most that can possibly be known about this corner of the universe.
This little corner.
I know as well as anybody. And that's because I take time every day to educate myself in that space.
Yeah. I think it's another common misconception that people think that success, again, there's that word, comes from a big break, right? And it's not a lot of overnight accumulated, recurring, hard work things. It's like the tip of the iceberg, people see. Sure. So I guess my question about that is, what would you say to somebody that is kind of stuck in that mindset of like, I just need my big break? Like you said, you need a door open to you.
Yes.
But that, I'd say there's a difference between that and a big break.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? And of course, big breaks still happen, right, but it's not like that's the end all be all for reaching success. Oh, absolutely. Again, there's that word.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. 100%. And coming back around to that previous point, as far as somebody opening a door, but the relative to a big break per se, you are only going to catch a big break if you are in motion. Like, you are not going to wait and just like sit and like do and then this thing's just going to show up and plop into your lap. Like, the odds of that happening are slim to none. What will happen, generally, and this is the thing that I've noticed, there are opportunities provided, right? There's doors opened. Do you or do you not walk through? Right? Are you or are you not in motion? Like, are you going to move or are you not? Because I think all day, every day, and we, frankly, as Americans, just even as a country, are more guilty of this than anyone else on the planet. Like, the quantity of doors open to us just due to where we live, even with all of its imperfections that we spend all day mad at each other on the internet about, this is the best place on the planet to live. And it's not close. People can talk, I've been all over the world, right? And there's great places everywhere, and there's great people everywhere. I've got plenty of friends all over the planet. But we are so fortunate, even just that definition, even just being right here in the States. And there's a whole fleet of other advantages we have above and beyond that. But the opportunity is present. So the door is open for a lot of different people to do a lot of different things. But we sit and wait. We sit and we're like, boy, I just hope, one day, I hope one day I'll get discovered. but I'm never going to go and like meet all the people that might discover me per se, you know. The moment isn't just going to come up and hit me. I hope one day I have a bunch of money. Well, if a bunch of money just shows up, it isn't free. You know what I mean? Like it isn't just going to be handed to you. And so, yeah, like have I been blessed with some really unique opportunities? Absolutely. You know what I mean? The opportunities Mike provided have been great. The opportunities my parents have provided have been great. I mean, there have been opportunities throughout my life, a whole fleet of different times. It's like, well, here's a chance. You could take this on. It's going to take a lot of work. You're going to have to take on a pile of debt. You're going to have to work some really uncomfortable hours for a while. You're going to get covered in crap when you go AI this cow, literal physical manure, you know, like you're going to have to do these things to take advantage of the opportunity that's been provided. So I think if somebody is looking for their big break, you got to be in motion. You know what I mean? Like you have got to take advantage of the opportunities that are given, because the more opportunities you take advantage of, the more opportunities tend to present themselves. You know, whereas if you're just saying, well, I'm just waiting, like opening the door is not enough. I want you to bring it in to me, you know, instead, like it ain't going to happen. The door is going to open. You're going to have to walk. So
Is there a moment where you felt a sense of accomplishment, even though on the outside, like, again, looking on from the outside in, doesn't maybe seem like anything's changed? Like, is there a certain moment where you're like, I am dang proud of that?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a number, but maybe it is. But is there something that you reached, either internal or external, and you're like, I'm dang proud of that?
Yeah.
Regardless of how much other people could see it. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, like quite often, and this is one of the things that I talk about quite a lot with my wife, is that, you know, what's visible maybe is the business, right? Or is the work I do, or the travel I do, or the sales I do, or the things and the numbers and the dollar values associated with all of that. All of that's quite visible, you know. What I am most proud of by far and away, and it's not close, is my wife and kids. Like by far and away. No question. There none like I've told Haley a fleet of times, like if I had to let the rest of it, like all the cows, all the business, all the money, all the whatever, go to hell in a handbasket, but I got to keep you guys 100%. Like I wouldn't bat an eye, right? Because at the end of the day, the rest of it's just things. And I think the misconception that people have, you know, they're like, well, like, but having a wife and kids is normal, you know. I mean, like, the old ball and chain, and you know, the kids that scream at you, you know. I mean, like, I don't know, like there's a lot of negativity often, you know, kind of surrounding family. And I mean, there's still plenty of my 3-year-old still screams at me, you know what I mean? And and my 5-year-old's sad and my 1-year-old's hungry, you know what I mean? And there's still like, it's not that it's not hard, right? To be a dad, or I'm not the perfect husband either. But, at the end of the day, I think that gets way overlooked, like in this pursuit of, again, quote unquote success. Like, the success that Seth has experienced is the house or the ranch or the cows or the business or the name recognition or whatever. That's not the success. Like the success is the normal part, right? I have my wife and my kids. You know, I think a lot of people, maybe they're sitting waiting for that big break. They've got a wife and kids right there that love them, that are like starving for their attention, you know, and they're sitting here focusing like, but my big break, you know what I mean? Or when this, I don't know, arbitrary measures reached, then I'll be successful. Or when I have this much money, that many cows, this property, like, then I'll be successful. I'm like, guys, like, you're missing the forest for the trees here. You know what I mean? Like, if you get it, like you've got the jet and you've got the Mega Millions and you're on the Forbes 500, like you've done it, and your kids got wrecked and your wife left you and you're on wife 2 or 3, you know, and bless those people's hearts. I'm sure that there's plenty of people that have managed to be happy at the tail end of that mess too. But the success is that my wife and kids love me. I mean, the rest of it, like, it means to an end. All of that exists, the cows, the dollars, the business, to feed my wife and kids, right? At the end of it all, if I'm in an apartment with my wife and kids, I am a success. You know, if I have everything in the world and I don't have them, forget it. You know what I mean? Like, who cares? Everyone's had money and things and stuff, and, you know, forget it. Like, my wife and kids, that's what matters. And that's people get way out of whack when they start focusing on all this other stuff as being more important than their families.
That's a perfect answer.
Appreciate it.
I think I just have one more question.
Sure.
So why is it more important to bring on people that have contrasting strengths to yours within business? Like, for example, with you and John, and I know John's doing his own thing now, but John was really good at these things and you were really good at these things and you complemented each other.
Absolutely.
Like for me, if I were to partner with somebody for business, it would be pointless if I partnered with somebody who had the exact same strengths as me.
Right.
Why is that more important, I guess?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, again, this comes around to very much, I mean, kind of a central theme of our discussion as we have talked about building out a business and building out what product you offer and that being specialized. And again, building out what kind of client you sell to and that being specialized or being focused. When it comes to the people that you work with and figuring out, finding that focus, because there again, you can't be the best at everything. Like it's kind of I would say it's a common issue especially within entrepreneurs. We get a little egotistical sometimes. You know what I mean? As far as like, well, like I know exactly how I want it done. So clearly I am the best at everything. Like I have to do it. Like I have to do this piece and I have to do this piece and I have to do this piece and I have to do this piece. And then we decide we just got to be martyrs because we just got to work 100-hour weeks from now till we're dead, doing literally everything. Right. And it's a little egotistical to do it that way. And again, not to say that like there are times like if you're an entrepreneur, you will work 100-hour. Like there are going to be times that's necessary, right? And you're going to have to figure out what it is even that you need or you want or where you're deficient before you can kind of hire to fill that need. But if you can, at the same time, you identify your real strengths or the things that you're exceptionally good at, you are going to find out the things you're horrible at, right? For me, QuickBooks, I tried twice. All right, so like for me, when it came to accounting, I would try to do all my numbers in one day in the year. Like I'd have to go through, I don't know how many thousands of transactions and try to do all of my year-end taxes on like April 14th. Like that was standard procedure, a mess of an Excel spreadsheet. And then twice I tried to learn the whole QuickBooks program, input everything into the whole QuickBooks program and have it spit out my taxes all in that same one day, which clearly, just failed abysmally twice. But my wife took the time to learn it, took the time to input all of it, took the time to do it right. And she's good at that. And then same type deal with the website. Like I have managed a website on my own before and it was a mess, and it was not aesthetically pleasing and it wasn't particularly functional. I kind of just barfed it onto the page and it was there and like I got stuff to do, Haley does a really, really nice job on things like that. So finding where you're not good and then I guess hiring appropriately. And I'm a big fan anywhere you can, finding an independent contractor, right? Because generally speaking, and I could be wrong. I'm sure there's plenty of exceptions to what works for me in my business, right? But for me in my business, it's generally more cost effective. If you can get somebody, even if you're paying them way more per hour or per gig or per contract or per job, but you only have to pay it for this much of the month, instead of being like, well, I need to have an on-staff videographer or I need to have an on-staff X, Y, or Z. Or so like our trucking is another thing that generally we contract it out because it's more cost effective. I can afford to pay more, a higher per unit value sometimes than a lower value all the time and try to keep somebody on staff and do it that way. And so I think, doing things like that, like identifying people and what they can do. And then I guess realizing too, and this has been an interesting, lesson learned just going through a transition, working with John. So John and I have worked together for a long time, right? We're college buddies. We're college roommates, worked together for 6.5 years there at Christensen Genetics. John had some neat opportunities come up for him and his family and some things he wanted to pursue. As a friend, I would never hold him back from that, right? So he made that transition. And that's always a little scary or a little disconcerting for many. You're like, But I guess recognizing too that there's going to be another opportunity, or there's going to be somebody else that it's not the same person and they're not going to do things the same way, but that there's going to be others that have some of those same aptitudes or some of those same strengths, and that it's okay that, like sometimes like what's a perfect fit today isn't a perfect fit tomorrow, and even something that's been going for a long time. Like there might be a time there's a transition and there's been opportunities for growth for John from that point forward, even though it's been a significant change for us. There's been opportunities for me within my company and how we've continued to fill those needs. But I think, again, just coming down to like, you can't be the best at every product, so pick the one you're best at. Not all the clients are going to want exactly what you have, so pick the ones that do. And when it comes to what do you spend your time doing, figure out what you're actually best at and spend your time doing that. Hire out these other things. And even if all your neighbors cuss you and say, well, how come you're not driving your own trucks and moving your own cows and moving your own fence? I'm like, that's not what I'm best at. What I'm best at is breeding the best cattle on the planet and marketing them accordingly. That's what I am best at. And I hire other people that can fill those other needs and that are good in each of those spaces and that fit there. That's what lets me be the best, because I wouldn't have enough time to be the best at what I do in this tiny corner of the universe if I was doing everybody else's jobs. So
right. Final question.
Yeah.
How do you define success now, and how has that changed?
It is really, really, really easy to get focused on things, and I think that quite often we use arbitrary measures for ourselves. Like, when I have this many dollars, I will have arrived. When I have this many things, I will have arrived. When I get this property or that, whatever, I will have arrived. And, news flash, and this isn't really news, but it isn't going to change anything. You know what I mean? You're going to get there and you're like, wow, this was great. I made X. Like, I'd like to make 10X. You know what I mean? Or wow, I picked up this one thing. I've wanted this for forever. Well, I'd like to get this next. It will never, I think it's a strength and a weakness, that is common, again, among entrepreneurs, that you're never going to be just 100% content. So the downside of that is, I think you can spend your whole life grasping for something you're never going to really hold on to, this success that you're going to grab and I'm just there and I'm perfectly happy. The positive is it keeps you kind of hungry. You know what I mean? It keeps you chasing. There's always something you're after. Like, well, I could do this better. I could improve that. I could make a little more money. I could make my life a little easier. I could improve this product. I could take better care of that client. Like, I could do better. Like, I think that's a positive in that sense, because it does keep you progressing. But I think if your success were measured by hitting those landmarks, you'd always find yourself empty. I think there has got to be at least a facet of what you're doing that involves enjoying where you're at and doing, like you're talking about, looking at where I'm at today versus where I was 10 years ago, and take a moment to be grateful for look, I said I was going to do this and I did it, here I am. And most importantly, again, to take time for those little things. Like, people don't define success as a happy family near as much as they should. It's way too often, it's the things, it's the money, it's the status, it's the time off, it's whatever. All that stuff comes and goes, the only thing that's going to be consistent is your family. So I think taking the time to appreciate what you have, that's where success is at. And that, for me, that changes everything if you've got that perspective.
Perfect. Well said. I can't think of any better way to wrap it up. So thanks for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it, man.
Having me on, buddy.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Got Any Cows podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, and visit us anytime at gotanycows.com.